The Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper. And now, Coach Bill Clark.
Welcome into the Bill Clark Show. Pat Smith, Landrum Roberts, Coach Bill Clark, and Molly Robinson. Welcome into the program. We have a national championship, Coach, ready to be played on Monday night.
Lots to talk about.
Yep, let's talk about it. Let's get the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame, a team that is an independent, did not have to play for a conference championship, against Ohio State, who didn't play for a conference championship. Right. So your thoughts just on the 30,000-foot view of these two teams?
Yeah, first, playoff football, and I think because we've had a little bit of a break, I think that's one of the things I love to talk about from being an ex-high school coach and what is it like to get hot at this time of year. We kind of used to relate it to basketball. Who's playing good when the tournament time comes? And I think that's what we're looking at with both these teams. We've talked about Ohio State before. Ohio State, probably the hottest, but look what Notre Dame's done. We got a great matchup, lots to talk about.
Yeah, it really is. This Notre Dame team, I'm going to start there and how they do it. And you want to say kind of a throwback. Their strength, they're not flashy. Yes, they have wide receivers. They certainly can run the ball, but physical up front. I've been really impressed, Coach, with Notre Dame. And you go back to that national championship game when it was the BCS against Alabama. Mm-hmm. And at some positions, yeah, they did match up. But at others, you said, ooh, that is drastically different than what I'm seeing on the other side of the ball. It seems like they're a lot more well-rounded. They have filled out all 22 with athletes that can certainly compete with the athleticism, the size, the speed that you get from Ohio State. I've just been super impressed with Marcus Freeman, how he carries himself and how he's handled this football team.
Yeah, we're going to talk about later in the show about Notre Dame. I think that's one of the things. But I love defense, toughness, running game. I think he's a guy that kind of, being an ex-defensive guy, he looks for that chip on his shoulder. He creates those moments for his team. They play really hard. They find ways to win. And I tell you what I've been really impressed with him is what a good job he does with clock management.
Let's talk about Ryan Day. This is a coach at Ohio State that, just think about it, after the Michigan game, it was pretty much you either win the national championship or you could be out. We're not hearing that conversation anymore because now they're playing for the national championship. But from a coaching standpoint, and listen, throughout your career, I mean, you got to have Teflon on you because you hear the criticisms at times. How difficult has it been for him to get after that Michigan loss to get this team turned around to thinking they could win a national championship?
Well, great story. I go to college, the AFCA, which is, going on right now, Coaches Association. I'm way back, this is back at Prattville, and I meet this guy, and he's built this clock, just a clock, and it's got a countdown on it. Jim Tressel had created this clock for the countdown to the Michigan game. I was his first customer. First guy to buy this clock from this guy. I got it. We put the boards on the bottom, and we would count down each week the next opponent. They had a clock for that, and they had a clock for the Michigan game. If that tells you to have lost that game 4 times in a row and he's still standing, obviously I feel like he was probably coaching for his job. I think we all know that. And I think we'd all go back right after the game, give the Michigan DC credit and what they did, but that was a big loss. They were very conservative. I think they've opened it up. We know. I think they're using their weapons. We can talk about Smith and all those other things, but they've been very impressive throughout. And then obviously, probably maybe the best game arguably in the whole deal was them in Texas last week. Great game.
Maybe the only thing, maybe I'm just reading into it, and we won't know until we've had a few years of a sample size, Coach. But with Ohio State, it was the best team that money could buy. And how they compiled that roster. That's well known, and it's allowed within the rules. But I hope we don't get to a mentality where moving forward, it's not so much devaluing the regular season, but already some of the buy-in, the incentive we see from these kids that are getting paid a lot of money to go and play college football, the inconsistency we're seeing week for week. I would hate to think that you start having that mindset, well, we know we have the capability of doing it, but we don't have to quite turn it on until we get to this point or this game or this week of the season.
That's why I thought we've got to get rankings back in, and we talked about this on 3-Man Front, rankings back there where there is something to what you did in the regular season, whether it gives you the bye, which I like, something that says to get in that top 4, because we want the regular season to mean something. I think now we're getting into these people that can pay for depth. Of course, really, when you start talking about an average of 12 to 16 million, we know these teams like Ohio State have gone way over that, but 12 to 16 million being for the Power 4 average, they're going to go out and create depth. They can go buy that depth. And, of course, especially Ohio State. But, of course, some of these others can too.
When you look at this matchup between Notre Dame and Ohio State, do you see at least defensively a mirror of each other? Or I know offensively a little bit different from an offensive standpoint. But defensively speaking, that's your side of the ball.
Yeah.
What do you think about these two teams? Are they comparable?
Well, first they're 1-2. I mean, you got one that's giving up 12 points a game. We had I'd changed my goal, and I'm a guy that still talked about shutouts, believe it or not. But 13 points is kind of like, I mean, can you really hold somebody to 13 points? They're giving up 12.2 points a game. Notre Dame's at 14.3. So to have 1 and 2, that tells you everything. And I think that's where people lose the sight of defense. And I have so many guys call me and I speak to them like, we can still score points. We can still score points, but if we've got a great defense, we can be consistent. Now, there's two different schools of thought. Ohio State's more too high. They're going to be some with three. They played some three safety look last week. Notre Dame has been more man free. I talked a lot. They like man coverage. But the physicality, the effort, the toughness. So you got really good defensive coordinators on both sides of the ball, and of course Notre Dame's got a head coach with a defensive background.
Yeah, and I know we're going to jump into the matchup, but if I'm Marcus Freeman, I'm playing it just like I have, and you're going to try to shorten the game. You're going to try to eat up as much as you can on the clock. I think all the pressure's on Ohio State. They're the favorite. Everybody's talking about how hot you are right now, and rightfully so. But this Notre Dame team, there's just something about them, Coach. They play for one another. And we said the same thing. I did anyways about Kurt Cignetti in Indiana. It's just obvious. You see that buy-in that they have, the love that they have playing alongside each other, playing for their head coach in Marcus Freeman. And I just wonder if early in that game you have a little bit of turbulence on the Ohio State sideline. That's a Notre Dame team that even in the Penn State game, they never flinched.
Right.
They believe that they're going to win. They don't know how they're going to do it, but they believe ultimately they're going to win. I don't know if you could say the same about Ohio State.
Well, I think we're going to go back, and we're going to talk about this in the matchup part of it, but go back, what happens with Smith? Can they control him? A team that's not really a too-high team, which Texas did that, and we talk about that's another one of our segments, but what do? Can they not give up the big plays to an Ohio State team who's very capable?
All right, so let's talk about Smart Banks, smart call of the week, Coach. And we stay with Notre Dame here because one thing's for sure, they have been hell-bent, no pun intended, the Catholic University, they have maintained their independence after all these years, and it's paying off for them at the bank.
Yeah, when you consider you're not splitting the $20 million. You're getting a check for $20 million. Of course, I remember I'd gotten a guy from Alabama, one of the coaches, and he said, yeah, Coach Saban was sitting here with this $15 million trying to decide how to spend it at the end of the year. So, it's not like it's unusual, but to get an extra $20 million, it's all important. Every dime's important. I mean, probably $20 million is, it's not like what it used to be, but it's still $20 million. And so that paid off for them. Now, you get the automatic bye as a conference champion. They didn't get that right. So maybe they gave up a little something there, but to get to pocket $20 million when everybody else is splitting it, that's a pretty good deal for them.
If you were given $20 million, what would you do with $20 million?
Gosh,
I'm not saying personally as a heading up a program.
Exactly.
Where would you even start?
Oh my God, I would simply go back to my UAB days and just trying to find. We were down there with crock pots, cooking food for the guys, and so $20 million. And when I heard that about the $15 million, throw 5 to recruiting and 5 to nutrition, and
we're hiring a short order cook.
Right.
We're going to need a griddle, a deep fryer, some commercial ovens, and a walk-in.
Well, you just brought it up, Coach. I think the interesting aspect to this is because whether it was the BCS in 1998, the College Football Playoff in 2014, and now the expanded College Football Playoff, they have catered to Notre Dame. Now, granted, Notre Dame cannot get a bye because they do not play in a conference championship game. But moving forward, by them not having to play that additional game, should it be a situation where Notre Dame is forced somehow, maybe not this next year, but the year after when they redo the CFP contract, where they have to play perhaps a 13th game to make up for a non-conference championship game?
I think – will they go to that extreme, even though that makes sense? I don't know. But it's got to factor in. It's got to be a factor.
I mean, James Franklin was taking shots at him down in South Florida. Now, Marcus Freeman has nothing to do whether Notre Dame plays in a conference or not. But James Franklin, first time in his career, I agreed with what he said.
Yeah.
It's not right for everybody else to have to go bust their you-know-what and play that additional game and risk injury, while Notre Dame can sit there and maybe get an easy home game like they did against Indiana.
Well, and we see it with the SEC beating up on themselves. And I think that's the question when you've got the week in, week out, and now we've got a playoff. It's a definite advantage.
And it's not unprecedented. We've seen teams scheduling that extra game to make it work, to appease everybody in the room. And Notre Dame has never struck me as a team that shies away from going out and trying to schedule. The problem is finding someone who wants to reciprocate and to make it work in the schedule. But
yeah, because who's going to want to do that?
Yeah.
When they've got their league they're playing against, which is already tough, and now they're trying to find ways to back that off.
Well, work out a deal. Your current media rights deal that you have through NBC and Peacock and your own little TV deal, why not be – you've always wanted to be the showcase, the spotlight game on national television, be the first game of the college football season, be the week zero.
The week zero.
Or the week negative, whatever.
Yeah.
That we could have and crank it up a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, but to think that they're getting $50 million a year from NBC, they get $20 million this year off the CFP, so that's $70 million, and that's the equivalent of an SEC team going to Destin and getting that nice check from Greg Sankey each and every spring.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're using what they've got, and you see it where they finally are spending their money to get the quarterback, to get some of these guys, and now it's legal, and I think that's where maybe some of these SEC teams were finding ways to get these guys. I mean, obviously, and now Notre Dame has been given the green light to go spend this money that they have.
Well, and until somebody forces them to buy the milk, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it goes back, Coach, to the fact that during COVID, the ACC had them by the short hairs.
Yeah.
I mean, the ACC said, okay, you need a conference to play in, so come affiliate, because you loosely affiliate by playing 5 games a year with us. We're going to allow you to play all the teams and be eligible for the conference championship, which they did play in against Clemson.
Right.
Well, they should have said, this is not going to be a one-year deal.
Right.
We're going to make you do this each and every year. But Notre Dame, once again, had the power, and the ACC fumbled again and screwed up by letting them have that independence.
Well, and if we remember the rematch in that game that they played in Charlotte when Clemson had their way with them, maybe that's the lasting memory.
That's
hey,
why
we
they
played
didn't
that
want to do
conference
it.
championship game, and it did not go too well. But you know what? You still got your way. You still got in the college football playoff that year.
Yeah.
They always get their way.
Historically.
Sorry, me and Landrum get a little fired up on that subject.
The thing I like Marcus Freeman. Love him leading that program.
He makes them more lovable.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest, because Brian Kelly was.
They got a good old boy from Fairhope playing quarterback.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He
seems like a really
I'm a fan. I'm a fan of his, and I like how they play. I like how hard they play. He talks about football. He talks about his guys. I think he's not full of himself, and hopefully he can stay humble.
Jeremiah Love, their running back, and this is going to be the battles of Jeremiah on each side.
Smith and Love.
But the effort, the gumption, the guts, you want to call it something else, intestinal fortitude that he showed with the extra effort and playing hurt, and what he did in that last game was incredible.
Well, and I'll leave it with this. I think players, no doubt, but that comes from coaching. That comes from a belief and a passion, and that's what I see, finding a way to pull them all together. He's looking for that chip, and I think he finds it.
Not playing for me, playing for we.
Correct. That's it. That's how it's supposed to be.
Well, undoubtedly, very smart. And Smart Bank, if you're smart, you go to Smart Bank.
Yeah, I was with those guys yesterday, and it was interesting to hear them say that they're getting what we've been talking about, which is people coming in saying, well, we get treated better here than we do anywhere else. And that's what, for us to believe in them and be part of it, I think that's very cool. So check the guys out at Smart Bank. They do a really good job.
Webb Concrete and Building Materials, building blocks to victory. Let's talk about the building blocks for an Irish victory. They're an underdog, a heavy underdog in this national championship, Coach. If you're drawing something up, where do you start for the Irish?
Yeah, we were kind of getting to it in the last segment, but I think and some of these things are like, we know these things, but the running game, and they run the ball even though people know they're going to run the ball. The quarterback run game, it's like they say about Leonard, how fast is he? Well, he's fast enough, but he's tough. They're able to run him. He's able to throw. And that's the guy I used to talk about all the time. That guy can throw it and still run it. And they use him in those situations when they need it, those third downs, those fourth downs, down there on the short yardage goal line. So their running game, obviously controlling Smith. We're going to talk about kind of what Texas did, but can you limit him? And I'm just really using not just Smith, but explosive plays, because Ohio State creates a lot of explosive plays. My third, and I think this is what they've run, they lead the country in block kicks. Special teams. We've had a kickoff return out of them against Georgia, block kicks. They do a lot of cool things in the special teams. And I think that goes back, once again, kind of my mindset, the defensive-minded head coach. They all play hard. But I said this earlier, I've really been impressed with how he's, managed the clock, little things, trick plays when he needed it. I think they are a little bit banged up, but I think those are the three keys for them.
as a defensive coordinator, if you're Ohio State right now and you're thinking about tendencies, and Notre Dame, they only do, and when we saw a little bit of a glimpse of it where kind of an improvisation from Riley Leonard when it looked like it was a design run, and then all of a sudden he pulls up short, little RPO action, and finds somebody. Yeah. Would it surprise you at all if you see a wrinkle and maybe you get Ohio State, well, this is what they do, and then all of a sudden you slip somebody behind the defense?
Yeah, I mean, that's what you want. If they get out of the too high shell and start creeping up and saying, hey, we got to take the run game away. We're going to get another guy in the box. But they've seen a lot of different things. Ohio State, you got a veteran defensive coordinator, and I love the cat and mouse of how they're going to play each other.
All right, so you have been in this situation, especially early on in your career at UAB, of being a heavy underdog going into a game. So take us into Marcus Freeman's locker room, the preparation about being the underdog going in against an Ohio State team that's heavily favored.
I think it's your dream. Please let me go in with a good team and be an underdog. It's one thing when you're looking over there going, we're not very good. We're an underdog rightfully. So this is a different story. He has used it as motivation, and we can go through these things. We were talking about the Rams where the Detroit coach comes up and tells the team, hey, we're going to see y'all in 2 weeks. That's all over the place. That's the stuff that I dreamed about. Give me something, please, that I can use as a motivation, and give me some arrogance, give me some cockiness. But these two teams have played each other not long ago. They're going to know each other. But he is going to use that point spread. That's why I hated the point spread. Who determined we're this much better or whatever? But
you hated it on that side. You loved it on the flip side, though, right? As the underdog.
I loved it. I love to be the underdog. Like I said, especially with a good team, because I think he's going to use this, and he has. He's proven that.
What is that like how was it for you in a week like that in the building? Are you constantly reminding as you wrap each practice? Are you saying, hey guys, are you poor mouthed and nobody believes in us? Is it?
It's just subtle, and it's those things with the team where you guys, we're going to win this game, but now whatever I say out there, just go with it. It's like they really don't believe in you. They don't believe how good you are. They don't believe how much we care about each other. We're going to show them.
I remember in high school, we went in after one practice, and there was a team I won't name, but it was a prominent team here in the state of Alabama at the high school ranks, and it just so happened that we fell on their homecoming.
Right.
But we came in on our lockers, and it said, the team that we were playing, we're nobody's homecoming.
That's right.
And you know what? That's all it took. It fired us up.
Well, and of course, Ohio State's trying to say, hey, we're the Michigan game or whatever. We're all using our things. We're playing for a national championship. How much more fired up can you be? But disrespect is a great motivator, especially in a game as hard as football. And can we get a little bit better practice? Because that's what you're really looking for. Everybody's going to be ready when it kicks off.
Sure.
Can we prepare a little bit better? Can they watch a little bit more film in this brief time when they're really tired? What can we do to use it? And I think Freeman's really done a good job with that.
You mentioned the point spread, and I'm just curious. And I mean, all coaches, they're not liars, right?
Not at all.
But I do want to ask you this from a point spread standpoint. How much were you cognizant of that? I'm talking about someone in the office like stopped by with a cup of coffee. Hey, I just saw USA Today's got you coach as a 3-point underdog or whatever the case may be. Is that kind of how it would fall in regards to how you would find out a so-called Vegas point spread?
Yeah, and we would usually hear about it from always other sources. And what happened to us as the end, we're now always the favorite.
Right.
Not minus playing Georgia, but as you start getting the favorite, I'm like, God dang, I don't want to hear that. Because that's what they're using. They're now the underdog. They're the team that, we're not supposed to beat. And then, how do I get that out of my head? Our guys had ignore that. We're the underdog. We're the one that they don't believe in, and they don't, because that works. And I think that fits, and that's a great way to be, is to play from behind mentality, or you've got something to overcome, or you got to pull together more. But I think this one is going to be interesting because it's such a big game and so important. That's just you're just looking for a breath, a hair, something that puts you over the edge.
Webb Concrete and Building Materials, building blocks to victory each week.
Yeah, love our guys at Webb Concrete and Building Supplies. They've got Pell City, Center, Birmingham, Homewood, Heflin, Oxford. They've got all the materials and flooring as well. Obviously, we got a guy in Pell City that
I hear he's really good.
And
he's really talented.
He's great. Tongue and groove, doesn't matter.
Yeah, he'd do it all.
He can handle it.
He can handle it. All right, Alabama Power, the Power 5 of the week. Each week on this show, Alabama Power brings us this segment, Coach, in regards to your Power 5 The top two pretty easy,
Yeah.
interchangeable,
Yeah.
but I can't wait, Landrum, to hear him put BYU up there pretty high.
Yeah, you knew BYU was going to be in there somewhere, but obviously I think we all know, you got Texas and Penn State and Georgia and Oregon, but teams that I think we love watching this year, I think Vanderbilt would come across to a lot of
Alabama
us.
and Auburn fans would disagree with you on that, Coach.
Yeah,
but
they
that's
don't
fine.
like them, but they've got to respect them. And I
Give
think
that kid another year.
Yeah.
Yeah, how many years is he going to play? But I think Vanderbilt was such a great story this year and how they did it. They go get, of course, we're in the transfer world, but they not only get the quarterback, but they get a staff. They get the head coach, they get Keel, and they turn it around with option football and running. I think Arizona State, not always a fan of Coach Dillingham, how he did everything. He might
But
have been
Scadaboo's the real deal.
yeah, but just I tell you how hard they played and the belief he created. And I've been that guy. When you had to try and create some belief in some guys that really probably shouldn't be there, but how hard they played, loving them, and of course Boise. Kind of representing obviously the non-power four.
I've got to vote. I think that Army deserves some consideration.
Yeah, I would say you're exactly right. Army, Navy. You got to put in there. They've been fun. We've loved talking about them all year. They've been fun to watch. They've been impressive. And, we could sit here and have a whole show on training that those guys do and what they've done this year. So, yeah, let's add Army and Navy to that both.
Alabama Power's been a proud sponsor of this program as well all season long.
Yeah, I think we've talked all season about how philanthropic they are and giving back to our community, really involved in every charitable enterprise that I've been part of. I think Alabama Power is always there for the community.
Donahue Chevrolet's drive for success. Let's talk about the Southeastern Conference, Coach. For the second year in a row, very disappointing. No SEC team will be playing for a national title.
That's really shocking. I mean, it is. And I think to have two teams, specifically Texas, I would have just, I think a lot of people would have put a lot of money that they would have been in there. They were solid. They had the veteran quarterback. They had the really good defense, And then, of course, I for sure thought they were going to find a way to win one of the two games against Georgia, but they didn't. So there's something missing there. Obviously, we could talk about the play selection down there on the 1 yard line, which kind of goes back to, and we talked about this in three-man front on Monday, was your mentality, which is a throw-first mentality. And when you need to run, and I've said this for years, when you need to run and you can't, you better be really good at throwing the ball. And I think they were good. I don't think they were great.
Me and Pat could have gone with Texas's roster and their schedule. We could have lost 3 games or less. That was a big F for me, a failing grade for Texas based on what they had, Coach. I'm being serious.
Yeah, I hear you. I think that's the thing. And we're talking SEC, but we're really talking about the team that should have been the representative, I think, this year. And I think Georgia had so many different with injuries and
their schedule was just too brutal.
And it was. It just really was. It was a historically tough schedule, even though maybe they earned that from some other
a couple of years.
Yeah, when they had the most NFL players of all time or whatever. But since I got to see that team. But, I do think with everybody being able to go out and spend money like they're able to, the SEC better look out. Because people know what that model looks like. They're creating their depth. They've all figured out you better go get O linemen and D linemen because skill guys are everywhere, And so they figured out that SEC model of those defensive guys. Now, we do think the SEC's beating up on themselves. We do know that. But I was very just disappointed that Texas didn't find a way, no doubt.
Well, if not this year, then when?
Yeah.
And you might have an upgraded quarterback next year with Arch Manning, but look at some of the other dudes that have already declared and decided that
22 players as
back.
of right now have declared for the NFL draft off the Texas roster. Now, some of them are out of eligibility, but 22 as of this moment.
Yeah, there's just no way you're the same team. I just don't think so. Obviously you can go get a lot of players. I'm sure they had great backups. We'll get to hear all that stuff, but I know it goes back to recruiting, and I think that's what's going to be interesting. Obviously we know the Indiana model. I think these guys have figured out that they can go find these players. They got the money to go find them. And I think there's a great article about Harbaugh, and how he knew if it ever became a pay-for-play model out in the open, that they had enough benefactors, enough donors, enough billionaires that they could go hit up. And that's what's going on. Which has been all our worry. Somebody says, hey, I want to go spend $10 million on this quarterback. They're billionaires. They got it. So, it's the world we're in right now. Does it change? We don't know. But I think the SEC it's going to be interesting.
Well, in talking about the SEC, Coach, I assume that moving forward, there was talk about the SEC playing a 9th conference game. I think based on what you saw this year, based on 8 conference games, I'm not too sure anybody in the right mind would vote for that.
Yeah, I do think we all know, and we could sit there now, let's defend the SEC and say what you got is so many more teams that are better, and they do beat up on each other. I mean, there's just no doubt about that. And now Kentucky can pay a player, and Vanderbilt can pay a player. I mean, at the game they're not. I know the president from Vanderbilt was talking about, wow, this is what it looks like. We got to all get in behind this NIL. Georgia Tech's president, they're like, which is the same thing we said at UAB all these years. A winning football program, what it does for a community, what it does for the school, and when those guys get a taste of it and see what it's supposed to be like, they're like, hey, we all need to get behind it.
What's it called? The front porch of your university?
That's it. That's exactly what it is. And there's so many, I mean, I'll get on a tangent here, but there's so many business schools and chemistry departments were funded by somebody at a football game that loved the experience, that said, I want to give to where I got my degree or the area I got my degree in, but they were at a football game when they did it.
Donahue Chevrolet?
Yeah, our guys at Donahue, we were talking about them off air, just our relationship with those guys. They've got all kind of deals at the first of the year coming back, but no dealer doc fees. You can go to ChevroletDonahue.com and check those guys out. But you got great people, and they're going to really try and find you a great deal. And, of course, love my Tahoe.
Radiance Technology Defense of the Week. We got to throw back to that Texas Longhorn shutting out Jeremiah Smith. What did you see, Coach, during that game? Because they absolutely shot him down.
Yeah, I think 2-on-1. I mean, if we went back and looked 2-over-1 for the majority of the game, so what does that do to the rest of the game? And I think that's the question. I mean, I always said we can take anybody away. I mean, we can double cover Julio Jones, and we did, We're going to double him, but what else is open when you do that? So they're able to find a way to keep him bottled up or a guy close and a guy deep pretty much, the whole game. I know that's very simple, but what does it open up when you do things like that? Because you can shut a guy down, and especially at the wide receiver position. Now, if you move him around and you find different ways, and I think, he had that one ball early in the game that they were able
dropped.
That he dropped,
yeah.
But, they got out whatever. But I think it was a good plan. Texas does maybe have arguably the number one secondary in the country. What's going to be interesting as we fast forward to this week, Notre Dame's a lot of man free. Do you tilt the free safety toward him, which opens up, you got your other receiver, you got the tight ends. Ohio State does a great job of getting backs out of the backfield, which has really become the newest thing, which I hated to see with the guys that really knew how to get backs out of the backfield, and Ohio State really does a good job of that. But I think Smith will have a chance to get his a little bit more this week, because I think you're going to see man free. I don't think Notre Dame's going to get away from who they are.
Is Jeremiah Smith, is he the best wide receiver you've ever seen in your life?
I don't know about ever, but I do think he's good. I mean, I think
he's really good.
Yeah, I think he's physically, you know how that is relative to the times, but physically at that age, he may be the best freshman physically. And I go back to Julio, who I saw in high school 2 times, but I think he's right there in that vein. And, of course, I love everything I'm hearing about his attitude, that's how you get better. A guy that says, hey, it's all in front of me, I got to keep working. I love all that. So we're going to see this will be very interesting this week with the style of defense Notre Dame plays.
Radiance Technology, they bring us the Defense of the Week.
Yeah, we love our guys at Radiance. Obviously, all kind of cool things going on in our country. Radiance is a really proponent of national defense. Obviously, they also sponsor a bowl game that was.
Yeah, it was down in Shreveport.
Yeah, down in Shreveport. I guess this team from
BYU.
Yeah, maybe BYU. Yeah. But yeah, our guys at Radiance, we appreciate them. And we talked about it the other week. They really dropped a ball in the Radiance bowl game from a drone that they created.
That was fantastic.
So, very cool.
Those are the good drones.
Yes.
A whole nother podcast.
Yeah,
it sure is. We can't get out of here without mentioning Buffalo Rock, Jimmy Lee, and the fine folks at Dr. Pepper and everything that they do for our community and college football and this radio show.
Yeah, I think Dr. Pepper, obviously with college football, what they do, but beyond that, Buffalo Rock, what a great company, family-owned business. Jimmy Lee, what he did for our guys at UAB, but he also supports Auburn, he supports Alabama. He's so philanthropic, and just appreciate those guys for letting us have our
quickly,
show.
We got to give a prediction on the game. What do you think? Final score, who wins?
Heart says Notre Dame, but I'm going with Ohio State.
Close one?
Close.
All right, there we go. That is the Bill Clark Show right here on Jocks 94.5 and wherever you download your podcast. For Molly Landrum, Coach, I'm Pat. Have a good weekend.
This has been the Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr.